the soldiers on the ground in Ukraine will pay the cost of this political squabble that's going on.
Now, there's been a lot of talk about a concern that America might pull aid. We know overnight that the US is going to pause any further aid to Ukraine. What does that mean in reality?
Well, Kate, thanks for having me on, first of all. And as to the impact of the quote unquote pause, it will have a direct impact on the battlefield. Remember that American aid has slowed down over the past weeks. And already on the battlefield, commanders are having to make decisions based on that reduced amount of uh, aid that has been arriving from America. And, you start to make decisions like, I normally shoot this many rounds today, but I don't know if any more aid is coming from America. So I'm going to shoot a half of that, or whatever number you choose. And so that direct effect on the enemy, remember, this is an enemy that's invaded your country 3 times, and it's an existential threat to you. And you're now having to make decisions about how much ammunition you would use about prosecuting that enemy. And that will affect your outcomes. The soldiers on the ground in Ukraine will pay the cost of this political squabble that's going on.
Is it a bad decision by Donald Trump?
Well, I'm not going to put my words into the president's mouth. He's the president. If I was the commander, I would never make this decision. But I don't sit in the seat that he sits in. Um, I think it's unfortunate. Our president, I think, was trying to close a business deal, and President Zelensky was trying to close a security deal. And it seems like they were two trains that passed nearby but didn't connect in the night.
Do you think that Donald Trump, by pausing aid, is effectively trying to force Zelensky back to the negotiating table on this deal? Because it seems to me that you're suggesting more Ukrainian men will die on the front lines because of this decision now.
Well, I won't answer that question because that's already been answered in the press. I mean, the reporting is that this is being done to force Zelensky back to the table. So I won't add to that. Those are not my words, but that is what's being carried in the press. That is the way that the president intends to force Zelensky back to the table.
Do you think it would be a good move if this has been done to force President Zelensky back to the table?
I think this went down horribly. And I think they should get together privately without cameras and without all of the fanfare and sit down and try to work this out. Our president really wants to close this business deal. And President Zelensky wants to find security assurances. The ones he's had in the past have failed. Remember that in 1994, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia signed an agreement with Zelensky saying, if you give up your weapons and disarm, we will assure your sovereignty and your sovereign borders. And so already America, the United Kingdom, and Russia, the aggressor in this war, have failed that agreement. And so Mr. Zelensky faces a history of failed agreements and broken peace deals and pauses. And so he now is trying to find something that guarantees him a security way ahead.
But it's not. I mean, I know this isn't your thought. This is what you're saying, that Donald Trump. This is how Trump views this. But it's not a business deal, is it? These are people's lives. Do you think Ukraine can continue fighting given
Why?
this pause?
So the real question is, what do you mean by continue fighting? I think Ukraine will fight as long as there are Russians on their soul. We have long said that if back when the whole world was predicting that Russia would run over the top of Ukraine in 4 or 5 days, everyone who has followed this fight in Ukraine said the same thing. Ukraine will never stop fighting. This will be the beginning of the largest guerrilla warfare that the world has ever seen, and Russia will be facing guerrilla warfare and insurgencies for the rest of the days if they end up being given Ukraine in these processes. So I think I understand what you're trying to ask, but I'm just saying that it's not quite as clear cut as you say.
Well,
Ukraine
no,
will
it's
never
it's
stop
not
fighting.
it's
You,
not
you,
clear cut. My point is more that there is a lot of fierce fighting going on at the moment. Ukraine is
there
making
is.
incursions into Russian territory, and they are obviously currently relying on a lot of support from the US. If the US withdraws that support, can they continue at the rate they are currently fighting?
Oh
And
no, no, that's straightforward.
can
Yeah,
they
that's
continue
straightforward.
with you? Can they continue with EU support? Is that going to be enough?
They can, but not at the rate that they're fighting right now. I mean, the what I am very proud of what I've seen of the Europeans across the last several days. They have been fairly steadfast in organizing themselves around getting support to Ukraine. They are going to try to stand by their commitments, and so that's good. I mean, in the recent past, Europe has been giving more money and stuff to Ukraine than America has. So already Ukraine has, Europe has supplanted America as the number one provider. So yes, I think that they will keep supplying Ukraine. Yes, Ukraine will have to decrease its operational tempo, op tempo, as we say, because they will lose the support of America and American weapons. But I think Ukraine will continue to fight on.
How do you feel about this decision by Donald Trump? On a personal level, on an emotional level, how do you feel about it?
Well, as I said at the beginning, if I was the commander, I would not make this decision. I think that our president is ostensibly the leader of the most powerful nation in the free world, anyway, and he sits on top of a big capability, and he is being asked by a man who disarmed at the request, not this personally Zelensky, but his nation disarmed at the request of the United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia. And they have now been under attack for 11 years. One of the biggest mistakes I continue to hear pundits talk about is that they say this war is 3 years old. It's almost 11 years old. It started when I was the SACEUR, and it hasn't quit since. The fighting on the line of contact, people were dying on both sides all the way through. So Zelensky and Ukraine have been standing up against a world superpower led by a war criminal in a battle for 11 years now. And so I think that we in the West should find a way to get past this event where so much was disrupted. And I think that if both gentlemen were to get down in private and sit down and work this out, that would be really good.
Do you think some of this from Donald Trump is for a domestic audience?
Again, I'm not going to try to guess what my president is doing. I will tell you that just like you suggest with your question, there are a lot of people that believe that Zelensky in Ukraine is not where we need to be sending our money. But the polling in America is very, very clear. In a much, much more demonstrative way, Americans see Putin as evil and Russia as not a country we should be aligning ourselves with. And so, by a huge margin, people see Russia as an enemy. Um, and clearly, there are a lot that see Zelensky and Ukraine as not a place we want to spend our money. But I think that President Trump understands where he wants to take the relationship with Ukraine, and he's working towards that. I say again, I might take a different path, but one would expect that from me, wouldn't they? I served 8 times in Europe. Almost half of my military career, I was staring at the Warsaw Pact and Russia. And I saw the evil that they do and how they comport themselves and how this war has gone, which is horrible. And so I have a very different take.
Just finally, what do you believe is Russia's price for peace? Do you believe that Putin wants peace?
um, he needs a peace right now. He needs a ceasefire because his army has been demolished. The best parts of his army are gone. He's fighting now with pulled together scraps. It's not going well for him. Think about this. He has had to ask North Korea twice to come to his aid to regain sovereign Russian land. That tells you how badly his army is in shape. So he desperately needs a ceasefire, and he wants the West to hold his gains during the ceasefire so that he can rebuild his army. So, what is Mr. Putin after? Mr. Putin has told us what he's after. You might remember, Kate, at the beginning of the last 3 years of this 11-year war, he handed us 2 documents. And he basically said, in English, he said, sign them or else. I think the Russian translation was, sign them or there will be other means. We know what those other means were now. He intended to invade Ukraine. We didn't sign the papers, and he invaded Ukraine. This last 3 years, as well as the first 8 years of this 11-year war, are completely contrived by Mr. Putin. This whole discussion about who's responsible for this war is complete nonsense. Mr. Putin is responsible for this war. He started it 11 years ago, and he accelerated it 3 years ago. And he handed us 2 documents that laid out his demands of the West and said, if you don't sign this, there will be consequences. And this war is exactly what he was talking about. So his goals are to completely dominate Ukraine. And if he can't occupy Ukraine, he wants the West to arrange it such that he can take over through the government and put another strongman in, like he did for so many years, and run Ukraine as sort of a remote, based on our allowing him to take over that government.
Philip Breedlove, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.